Welcome to Rejected Religion Spotlight. I'm Stephanie Shea. My guest today is Cavan McLaughlin. Cavan is a senior lecturer in media production at the University of the West of England with research interests related to the role and function of a culture. He is a filmmaker, artist, and media producer, the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Monad, Journal of Transformative Practice, as well as the founder and chair of the Trans States Organization. Welcome, Cavan.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm happy to welcome you, and it's a pleasure to talk with you today about Trans States and the conference. The most recent one just took place in September of this year, and I was able to attend. I really enjoyed myself immensely. It happened at the University of Northampton in England, and it was my first time attending the conference. And as I said, I just had a wonderful time. But you've organized a few other conferences already. So I was wondering if we could start out with a bit of background about how Trans States came to be and what the inspiration was for you to create this organization and conference series.
Yeah, okay. So just before 2016 is when I took a new direction with my sort of research career. Prior to that, having been given a research-based contract and having a full lectureship, my research was actually I was still doing a lot of practical media work, and my research was around kind of pedagogy and particularly group work dynamics and things like that. And I just had this kind of sudden realization that I was spending 90% of my time reading about sort of the study of religions and things around various esoteric subjects. And also in my life, that was a very private part of my life at that point. I had been sort of keeping it very much to myself and sort of living a double life. And I actually made this conscious decision that I wanted to like bring those two parts of me together, kind of unapologetically be myself. And also like when I got so much joy out of these research topics, why wasn't that my field of research? It just seemed crazy. So I had been speaking with a colleague about how I kind of wanted to put on some sort of conference. It all came about because I'd been at Northampton for 2 years and I'd finally sort of made some personal contact with Alan Moore, who was very kind to be a keynote at the first conference. And, you know, a lot of that was all just kind of like how that all fitted together. I'd met him at another event. You know, we'd had a bit of a chat and I was like, well, if what I want to do is have my research in this area of esotericism, and I've just met this man who's like so iconic in that field, then surely I should like put this conference on and invite him. And then it was very much, I'd say that there were two major influences, if I wanted to give credit where it's due, which was the interdisciplinary net conferences, which happened. They were these, you know, kind of fascinating events. At the clues in the title, they were really focused around bringing together lots of people from lots of different disciplines. And they had these really great conferences, which were kind of roundtable events. And there was lots of room for discussion. It was, you know, it was quite a slightly more a traditional format in some senses, but a little bit more unconventional in others. And it was a really great place for me to find my footing as like my entry into that world and speaking at conferences and delivering. And because of my subject area, I'm a lecturer in media production, but I teach on a media communication and culture course, which is a highly interdisciplinary subject, you know? And so my work has always been incredibly interdisciplinary. And then, so it was those conferences. I published a couple of articles in 2016. So this was like just my kind of explosion out into this as my new direction for research. I'd also attended a few of the Breaking Convention conferences, and the organizers of the conferences are good friends of mine. And they take this, because with their focus being psychedelia, they cover very, very serious, quite straight, heavily objective, scientific psychedelic research material. But they also made room for the wider psychedelic community. There were people doing much more kind of radical things there. I mean, it's a convention as opposed to a conference. There was they always have very good nights out that are built into the conference. They had workshopping. It just had a bit more of a less stuffy, slightly more playful approach.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was kind of really drawn to that. I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm a playful person. I also want to take a playful approach. It was very much, I want to make the kind of conference that I would really enjoy going to if I'm going to do it. And the other thing that Breaking Convention did, which I was really motivated by, and I spoke to them about this, was that they had in their eligibility criteria that it wasn't necessarily about having traditional qualifications, but being able to demonstrate that you were an expert in your given area, whatever that might mean. And that is something that I built into Trans States from day one, and it was very much rooted in what they were doing. And I had a great amount of admiration for that, because I think in the kind of broader cultural community and esotericism more broadly, we have some incredible independent scholars who maybe don't have sort of traditional qualifications. And I'm also deeply aware that many of the artists and practitioners, they have, for a start, they're phenomenological researchers, they're practical researchers. And for me, it was really important to bring those communities together to have fruitful conversations. I know it's not the first time it's been done, but that's something that I really wanted to do, because I was both those things, and I was going through this experience of bringing those things together in my life as well. So it kind of got mirrored in the conference.
I see.
And my desire to not just have these individuals be the subject of research, but have like a conversation on an equal footing, which is why it's always been incredibly important for me as well to feature artists and practitioners as keynotes as well, and sort of show that, as I say, expertise can be considered in different ways and in different modes and modalities.
Right. Well, I was quite impressed with this character of interdisciplinary approaches. And as you said, there are not only academics present, but also practitioners, different artists. You even created several beautiful artworks that were displayed or exhibited at the conference as well, which I really enjoyed. And you also kindly allowed me to share those artworks. They will be included in the video and in social media for promotion for this interview. I really enjoyed this mixture of the emic and the etic, as you were talking about just now. These alternating approaches. I think it worked really well. Was this blending of concepts, was this something that everyone took to very easily, or was this a little bit tricky in the beginning?
No, people took to it straight away.
Oh, good.
In the first conference, it was a huge success, and it really found its place in its desire to do that. And I think partly because actually it's a tricky thing to get right.
Yeah.
Because I have seen others, and they'll lean maybe one way more than the other, and struggle with keeping like an actual equal footing. And there is the possibility of making serious scholars feel like that the balance isn't right and that the scholarship isn't legitimate enough. And I'm very concerned that we maintain a certain standard, because it can slip a little if you're not being sort of discretionary enough. But then similarly, like a desire to overassert that can make some practitioners feel outsiders or undervalued. And so it is a difficult line to walk. And, that's my main role, I guess, is trying to make sure that tightrope walk is achieved. And I think not that there's never been any, sometimes people have their own preferences and would like me to go one way or a little more. But I think overall I've been happy with that. And I see that as my primary role, is this like building bridges. And that's what a conference is. It's a bringing people together. It's like I'm making that space. It's the melting pot. And it's not necessarily for me to decide what will arise out of that melting pot. I'm just creating the opportunity and the possibility. And some incredibly fruitful new relationships have like come out of that. And that's precisely what we do these things for. Indeed.
I felt, just for my own personal experience, a real sense of camaraderie and that everyone was willing to engage with each other. And I didn't get any sense at all of one group feeling a little bit, miffed about the other group or anything. It seemed to be really comfortable in that regard. So, as my first experience, it was really inspirational in that aspect, that, oh, wow, this can actually occur. This can actually happen. And that made me feel, really great about the fact that there's so much creativity also included. And that to me, I find that also to be an important thing personally, but for other people, I'm sure that's the same as well.
And I think part of it, like even just the name trans states and the way that we kind of like present ourselves, there's lots of stuff around me playing with the idea of like maybe questioning some of these sort of perceived binaries. And so, because it's not just insider and outsider, emic, etic. Again, these are like quite a binary kind of thinking again, because of course we have practitioner scholars and people that are both. We have people that have, so there's outsider, there's people that have been insider and then repositioned as outsider and vice versa. And actually there's a whole different spectrum of modes and modalities, again, as I said earlier. And sort of me specifically being quite open about being both a practitioner and a scholar, both in the sense of being an esotericist and an artist. I think that, again, I love some of the other conferences that don't do that at all. And there's definitely time for different approaches at different times. But, like it was about making a place where I was certainly at home. And then, so many of us in the broader community have, they may not be professionally situated as much to have that dynamic. But informally, as a community, a lot of these people are already friends and interacting in many ways already. And so, And so when it's about kind of the community itself, which I think is really starting to blossom, there's really a sense of people that consider that like will come back to everyone and sort of consider themselves like a part of that network now. That's like, it's just trying to say as a make a comfortable home for those people or a moment in time for them to be that unapologetically, rather than some other conferences I've gone to where it's more like a bit of a whispering of like, I've done this, I have some interest in this, but I'm not, going to talk about it
right.
Because of how I might be perceived or whatever. And it just creates a little bit more comfort for people to be able to show about these.
Yeah, good points that you made there. And kind of to piggyback on that, that general attitude, quote unquote, so to speak, of the conference was very open. And you mentioned earlier about the inspiration that you had about the round tables, and it just seemed to be this very free exchange of ideas. I really appreciated that too. I welcome that type of attitude, but I mean, we both know that probably some people within academia would consider some of the topics that are addressed at trans states to be, quote unquote, problematic or, maybe even controversial. So I was wondering if you could talk about your own feelings about the importance of this balancing and inclusiveness, and also maybe the challenges that go along with that.
Yeah, I mean, there are some challenges, aren't there? Because if you're attempting to be building bridges and having that kind of like openness, maybe to a more radical degree, again, there'll be some dissension about like where those lines ought to be drawn. But again, it's really just a reflection of me. I have a very deep commitment to freedom of inquiry and academic freedom, and that's not to say that one doesn't have to be careful, because taking a kind of open, tolerant approach doesn't mean that anything goes,
Right.
But it means that anything goes up until the extent that it's like infringing on the kind of freedoms of others, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important to not have things be taboo. I think it's really important for people to be able to intelligently and critically engage in any given field of inquiry. Because if we, again, by ring fencing it out and saying, that's a place that we don't go, it creates power with taboo. It actually draws other people to it in a more problematic way, So it can be difficult, and it sometimes means allowing individuals that I might not agree with their positionality, both, how they are openly or how I know they are behind the scenes, So, it's not like I'm putting a platform there for everyone where I'm behind what they're saying. Mm-hmm. But I feel like if people have dissenting positions from me, my position has always been, then let's have the argument. Let's get it out there, right? Let's mm-hmm. discuss it, which I think is, an appropriate position for, well, certainly an academic, and I would go as far as to say anybody, a responsible citizen.
Yeah. Well, that spirit certainly did come through very strongly. I felt at the conference that there was a certain understanding and just an understood level of respect for each other. And even if you were talking about something that, like you said, you might not personally agree with totally, or you might have some issues with it or whatever, just to, remain open-minded enough to be able to talk about it. Although I never had any experiences of people getting a little bit, upset or, alarmed or anything like that. It seemed to be incredibly, like I said, it was just more of a friendly atmosphere in that regard. So,
well, I think because if people have a certain sense of how to put it, that they're very glad for the opportunity for that space and for it to be that way, because it affords them their voice and their dignity and a certain amount of respect. Even if you politely spar or disagree, that's what draws me to academia is that approach. The fact that I have colleagues that we can like quite seriously disagree on things, but that doesn't make us disagreeable, right. And that's not often the case in society at large. Sometimes there is this sense of, if we disagree on a point, blocked on social media, you're not in my, and I've never been like that as a person. I'm like, if I radically disagree with something, my first impulse is like, well, how did you come to that position? Explain it to me, like break it down. I want to know.
Right. Well, I think as you're going along through your through each conference that it's probably just getting more that you're being able to realize these goals more easily, and that people are starting to just understand that that's your intention, and be respectful of that. So I think that's a great thing. Again, the theme of the conference this year was the art of deception, and this is the program book and I think it's backwards probably for the viewers, but in any case they can see the image. And the image you chose this year is the Magician tarot card from this is from the Rider-Waite Smith deck. I remember you talking about, I think it was in the last discussion panel, how there seemed to be this thematic development happening with each conference as you're planning them and thinking about the next one as well. Could you talk about how you go about choosing the themes and why this theme was chosen for this year's conference?
Yeah, so to be true to my word and true to how I was speaking on that panel, I have to be, I guess, honest about that. I'd sat down with kind of some desire to put the first conference on and not, quite sure where I was going to go with it. And I don't really know what other words to use, but it all came as some sort of an inspiration. Like it came as a fully complete concept. It was one of those burning the midnight oil, sat in the office on my own until goodness knows 2 or 3 in the morning. So the name came to me. I love a good pun. I love wordplay. And there was already quite kind of like a lot of conceptual things built around what I knew I wanted to do with the conference and what the name was, which was these ideas about sort of liminality and transgression and the crossing of boundaries and the extent to which boundaries are kind of written and rewritten. And we kind of, they're much more fluid than people give them credit for. And I knew that's what I wanted to look at. And so like the Hanged Man card seemed like this perfect identifier for that. In the first conference, and then the other conference themes did not come sequentially later in time, but the first 4 came to me that night altogether, and so there was like a lot of questioning about that because like it's fun doing something like the Magician card, which is quite a iconic card. Might have been what someone would think would be the first one, or you might start at 0 or 1 and work sequentially through. And people are like, why was it the Hanged Man? And then why the Tower for number 2? And I'm like, well, I don't know why, because that's how it all came to me in like a rush of kind of inspiration as I was like furiously sort of like catching up with the idea as it was coming to me, and it had its own sense of kind of autonomy. And this, how sometimes something comes as fully formed and you're chasing after it, which I think happens to all of us. I talk to my students about this a lot. We talk about creative processes in class, and I've yet to meet someone that hasn't had the experience of some sense of a huge download of something, whether it's a song or a painting or like some creative work, or even in academic writing itself. It can sometimes just become something that happens to you or through you, or there's some sense of that. And there was an element of that to it. So I had the first 4, and I knew what each of the cards was, and I knew what each of the core concepts was from that first night.
So the Magician, this one, I thought this was so uncanny that it's kind of the trickster elements that we have in this card, and it was very, I don't know, I guess maybe fitting that that seemed to be happening throughout the entire conference when it came to trying to get your camera set up and the microphones wouldn't work. And it was just a very strangely appropriate.
I even had conversations with people beforehand. I'm like, okay, so we're talking about trickster gods. We're invoking Mercury in this, and we're talking about things to do with technology and communication and the kind of innate tricksiness of that. And we were literally going like, of course we're going to have tons of tech problems, obviously. And then it happened. And just the whole way through the conference, you can kind of see everyone going, yep, that makes sense.
Yep. Okay.
And they even happened in like really kind of playful, outrageous ways as well. And it was like, well, how else was that going to be, you know? Which again begs the question: why are you invoking cards like the Tower and tricksters in the first place? And I did make that playful comment, like I need to do the Sun card or something like that.
Right, but I imagine that Sun card is not the next one. What is the next one?
So the next conference is going to be based around the Fool card, and it's going to be Trans States: The Art of Initiation.
Wonderful. That sounds already so exciting. I'm wondering for people who might be listening to you talk about this and they're like, well, I want to know more about this. And I would, I'd like to attend this. Is this open to anyone who's interested?
It's absolutely open to anyone as delegates. So yeah, absolutely. And it's very much that. So even when we're talking about bringing people together, whether they're artists, esoteric artists, or esoteric practitioners, or scholars, both independent or institutionally backed. Also, we very much welcome sort of like the broader occultural community that just has interest in that field and just wants to be a part of that. So it's absolutely, in terms of attendance, it's completely wide open. And then in terms of participation, as I said before, it's open to anyone who, demonstrably has some sort of expertise within what they do and can demonstrate that, as part of the kind of like process of proposing.
Wonderful. And I can also recommend that people check out your YouTube channel, because Trans States also has a YouTube channel. You have a website, of course, that people can find more about you online through that. I will include that information in the program notes. But the YouTube channel, you try in any case to record everything at the conference, and then upload it on the channel at a later date. I was just wondering if you have any indication, any idea of when this year's recordings will be available on YouTube.
Yeah, so it takes a little while.
To
get things. I mean, first of all, there's the immediate crash after doing the conference.
Right.
The organizing has so from the start. I'm a media professional. I'm a filmmaker. There was just no question about us recording and making these. But I'm very committed to open access principles anyway. And also just what we already said about this not being a closed thing, and about, obviously impact is a huge thing in the academy now. And, if you publish, which is still a very, very important part of academia, you have to be a huge success to have a very broad range of people engaging. And also, we're living in a world where people want to engage with these themes and ideas through social media, through podcasts, through video. A lot of my students are like, we don't even read books. It's all, I want to hear lectures. I want to listen to podcasts. I want and we think about that in our own classes, as well as giving them readings, giving them access to academics through other platforms, really great lecture series they do. And the YouTube channels, the materials on there have been watched probably 200,000 times, coming up to that now. And that's really important, right. That those ideas are getting out there, that they're having that impact. And many of the people that have applied to come that have been an incredible and important part of the conference have found it through accessing those materials, which we've released at a later date online. So I'm in the process. We're working on it. We may take a slightly different approach this time, and we may do a 2-tiered release because we're trying to find ways to help finance the organization, and so we may do like a Patreon and do like a delayed release to the wider public. So that's a little bit of part of what's holding it back. Plus just getting everyone's time together because it's a lot of hours of material and requires a lot of work. Definitely. But we're hoping to see releases right at the starting of the new year. So not terribly far.
Excellent.
And then it'll be a drip feed, until it's all out there, or as much of it out there as is appropriate, because out of respect for the participants, not everybody wants their material to be shared. And so it's always down to the individual speakers whether they are happy for those materials to be publicly available. But the vast majority do. And there's also just the selfish that when I'm there, I literally don't get to see anything because I don't have a second. And I put these conferences on because I want to see all of these people speak. So it gives me the opportunity to go back and watch it twice all to myself and get to enjoy the materials that I put the conference on because I want to hear all of these people and I want to hear their ideas.
Of course. And that's kind of the curse when you're organizing something, then you're never able to just sit down and listen and observe, and take it all in because you're always busy with a million other things. And even for someone like myself who attended with the parallel conferences or parallel sessions going on, you can't always see everything yourself. So that's also really nice to have that opportunity to be able to view that on the YouTube channel. The things that you've missed. So and in the meantime, for the viewers out there, check out the YouTube channel and for all of the past uploads from the past conferences that are already there and available. And also for the viewers and for the listeners out there, if you're interested to know more about Cavan's own work, you can find his page on academia.edu. If as well you are interested to know a little bit more about my own ideas about trans states, at my blog on rejectedreligion.com, I have put some posts there about my own impressions and reflections on the conference, so you can read it there if you're interested. Cavan, is there anything else that you'd like to share that I haven't asked you about?
Wow, I don't know. Well, first of all, by the way, thank you for your updates and which I read.
You're very welcome.
And I've been following what you're doing in your work since our meeting at SWay 7.
Yeah.
Where I gave the talk on tulpamancy, which to date it has been. People they seem to enjoy that more than anything else that I've done. So I need to get my PhD done and dusted so I can get back and throw myself into that because.
Well, it was a wonderful talk, and it was so very. I didn't know ahead of time what you were going to be presenting until I saw the program, of course. But how our two presentations seemed to fit so well together. That was
it was great. It was really, really enjoyable.
That was really enjoyable.
Yeah. So I think what you're doing, with your platform, there's I can see that there's some kinship in our kind of missions and getting these things out to a wider audience, bringing it in alignment with the era that we're in.
Exactly.
So I guess a thank you to you for what you're doing and then for inviting me on to be a part of your initiative also.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I mean that because I think, as you said, the bridging is very important. So I try to do that as well. And I welcome anyone who has that same spirit to join in. So, I think that's really important to be mindful of the larger public out there that's also interested in these topics and these ideas.
And who doesn't necessarily want this sense of, the ivory tower,
Exactly.
Dusty books, and that this is what scholarship is,
Yeah. So sorry for the viewers out there. I'm experiencing some lighting difficulties. So now you will notice that everything looks a little bit different on my end. But we're going to press on. Actually, we're almost at the end of the interview here, because I wanted to thank Cavan. I wanted to thank you so much for sharing all of this wonderful information and your insights about your conferences and Trans States organization, and why these conferences are so important. And I really wish you all the best with your endeavors and with the preparations for the next conference to come.
Yeah. Well, I urge people to follow us and watch what we're doing, because, we've, again, the fourth conference in the series, and it's the art of initiation. And it the question mark may be over, like, why, after three, why is this the initiation? But we're really evolving as an organization, and we're really opening different vistas, and, we're hoping to offer even more than we already have. So, and I welcome kind of the broader community to engage in that conversation, let us know what people want, as much as just following what our ideas and our intentions are. So Excellent. We're hoping that there, will be other events and other things under the Trans States umbrella, beyond just the flagship exhibition and conference series, because the art exhibition is at the heart of what we do, because we're studying art. But yeah, we're definitely expecting number 4 to have a slightly new feel to it, and be a sense of a stage in evolution. So yeah, watch out for that.
Well, I can't wait. And I just wanted to thank you again for making the time to come talk to me today. And yeah, I wish you just all the best with everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all we have for today. Be safe, everybody out there. And I will see you again next time. Bye.